Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra or the Galaxy Z Fold 6. Very different form factors with both of these. Of course, we've got foldable phone versus traditional slab-style flagship phone. And you may be one of those people out there that are thinking about or considering swapping over to a new form factor to try something different, right? Well, this video is then for you, because I'll be covering the differences between these two flagship phones from Samsung, both powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. I'll let you know key differences like not only just the format, the use of them, what they're both like at playing, say, media files, video, battery life, performance with benchmarks, cameras even. Is there a massive difference between the Z Fold 6 and the Galaxy S24 Ultra? Or perhaps they're closer than you think? Well, let's find out in this comparison. So we are talking about, of course, very different style of phone here, a foldable versus a flagship slab style phone. This is, of course, the top dog when it comes to cameras from Samsung. The differences here are we get 50 megapixel main versus 200 megapixels. Now, for standard kind of daytime shots, that megapixel count doesn't really make too much of a difference. Don't focus on that too much. We do have 12 megapixel ultra wides and zoom camera. The S24 Ultra's periscopic zoom camera is 5 times, and we have 3 times optical zoom with the Z Fold 6. So if you need to zoom into a lot of things, maybe you travel a lot, you want to zoom into those pyramids, okay, in Cairo there, well, you're probably better off with this. It's pretty clear cut. Most people would know that. You want the best cameras and the larger battery and better battery life, and the outer screen being wider and more normal is, of course, the S24 Ultra. But the style of phone here does appeal to a lot of people, like myself. You're basically carrying around a small tablet in your pocket. And this is the reason why a lot of people have to make this decision, whether they go flagship foldable or flagship standard style phone. So outer screens, no contest here. This is an okay screen, but it's a secondary screen, of course. It's the main one is your main phone screen they want you to be using. And you can answer messages and do everything on the outer screen. So right now, I was just before typing here to see what the screen is like. And I'm just typing here, how narrow. And, oh, typo. Okay. So it's better than what it used to be. The original Fold 2, if you remember that one, was really narrow, and I really struggled. I had a bit of a mission of a time typing on it. Now this, a lot better here now with the S24 Ultra. So if I just type in here, how narrow? Okay, good. No problems. I find it a lot easier to use. So those are the differences in the outer screen. This one is a lot clearer, a lot brighter, easier to use. So physically, what are we talking about in their differences in size? So you can see it's quite chunky compared to the S24 Ultra. So that's 8.6 millimeters versus 12.1 when folded. Okay, and you see there that makes up for a substantial difference that you do notice in your pocket. And you can see that I can easily place this on the top here. And you see that that is the difference we're looking at how much wider it is, how much taller it is, the S24 Ultra compared to the Z Fold 6. But then you'll see when you open it, this is now 5.6 millimeters, which is very good. And the build of this really nice aluminum frame, titanium frame. So the more durable phone will be this with the titanium. Okay, and you are looking at a phone that has been strengthened compared to the previous models, but I would still say if you're going to be dropping the phones, which you never want to do, that this will fare better, I feel, because of the screen, which is foldable. And normally you're going to have that open, so you don't want to drop it when it's open, but it has a lot more protection. So squared off now with the newer one, we have the capacitive side fingerprint reader. We have a fingerprint reader that is in screen with the S24 Ultra that I think is just a little bit better. But this is why you get the phone for the multitasking, the Z Fold 6. And I'll talk a bit about that now, the differences you can expect in the screen size. So the thing is, with foldables, you get that extra usable space in your apps, in your UI, multitasking. So I could run a Play Store here. Let me just bring this up now and decide that I want to bring it over into another screen. I can choose to have it at the top here, left or right. And this is like having 2 phones either side, whatever app I want to run. So I can have calculator there, I can have Play Store, and you see that this is good. So multitasking, definitely where it's at with these phones. And the key reason to go for a foldable, I think, so you can have your emails here, resize this, move the screens around, decide to swap them over, whatever you want to do. Now, if you're playing back something like Netflix or YouTube is probably a better example too at that. If I go into YouTube here, you see that we've got this border top and bottom because it's 16:9. Now, if you have your S24 slab phone style, 21:9 aspect ratio, and I'll try and get this into the larger screen size, so just flip it around here, okay, and then put this over the top. So factoring in those bezels with the Z Fold 6, and then the bezels would get either side with 16:9 content. We're not actually gaining that much more screen with a foldable phone. I mean, a little bit, but top and bottom we have those bezels, so a little annoying there. So the advantages of the screen being larger aren't so useful when it's standard aspect ratios like Netflix, or if you're looking at YouTube or any other media video content, which is typically 16:9, that's where you are going to notice a little bit of it. But when you are in a website, so you're browsing the web, this is where it's quite handy to have just that extra space and the multitasking. So this is the big pro, the positive that you get, because if I jump over now into here I have my S24 Ultra, okay? You'll see that when I go into this, the experience isn't, oh no, that Alf star died. Okay, that's not good. I used to watch that as a kid. Anyway, you can see it's a lot different there, and if you have it, you decide to rotate it around, okay, looking at it landscape, that the experience isn't quite as good. This is like having a mini tablet versus your standard phone. And of course, when you're done, fold it up, and you can easily place that in your pocket. Battery life is one area where you're going to see a big difference because of just the sheer size of our screen we get with the Z Fold 6, and it's at 120 Hertz. This is 120 Hertz as well. There is a big difference and a huge impact that the screen does have on that battery life. So with this PC Mark fixed battery life test, you see it ran for 8 hours and 37 minutes, the Z Fold 6. This went to 12 hours and 42. Now, this is not realistic battery life. Realistic on-screen time for me is around about 8 to 9 hours with the S24 Ultra, and we're looking at about 6.5 or so, 6 hours that I can typically get out of the Z Fold 6. So not amazing battery life. If you need to have the best battery life, the obvious choice is to go for a non-foldable phone. Go for the S24 Ultra if you're looking at these two. Charging times, big difference because it is, well, it's a smaller battery. We have 4,400 milliamp hours versus 5,000. It's 25 watts versus 45. So it took 67 minutes to fully charge the S24 Ultra, an hour and 16 minutes, unfortunately, for the Z Fold 6. So rather slow to charge, and it has the weaker battery life, which is something to definitely factor in. Storage speeds, there's not too much of a difference, but it is faster with the S24 Ultra. And then the performance, both of them powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, but you can see that it's the S24 that pulls ahead. The S24 Ultra is faster. Better GPU scores, a lot better. For some reason, they are quite a bit lower, but not much of a difference with the CPU score with the Z Fold 6, even though they are more or less the same chipset. I think there is a difference in the clock speeds, but it's only very minor there with that. And then the thermals on both of them, throttling, they do throttle through similar kind of performance, but it's the foldable that throttles down quicker. In 2 minutes, the performance really drops off, where you can see it drops off at about the 3-minute mark here, but it takes till the 9-minute mark before it seems to level out that performance. But both of them lose almost, well, 50%, half the performance, and almost half when you do push them really hard. And you can see it gets up to 45 degrees, the S24 Ultra versus 40 degrees with the same exact test with our Z Fold 6. So if you game a lot and you want better frame rate, well, there's not too much of a difference between them because both of them are throttling to similar kind of performance. However, this one will go longer on the battery gaming. So for gamers out there, you probably want to pick, again, the S24 Ultra for that. And one of the key strengths for the Z Fold 6, especially if you're someone who's quite artistic, you love to use a digital pen, your stylus, draw sketches and whatnot, you've got all that extra screen space to use with the Stylus. Now, the Stylus, unfortunately, doesn't fit. This is the Fold Edition Stylus, but the S Pen doesn't fit within the Z Fold 6, but it does, of course, with the S24 Ultra. I can easily just slot that in, and that's really good. And it's easy enough to remove it as well, and it works fine, but you don't have as much screen space. So this is one area I think a lot of people will love the Z Fold 6, is because you're able to just, use that stylus on such a larger space. You've got, well, almost double the screen size. Not quite, but it just gives you so much more room. Running that stylus over where the fold is, where the crease is, you barely even notice that when using the S Pen. Performance is really good. There is basically no lag whatsoever when using it. Now, audio quality with voice calls on both of them sounds very similar to my ears. I can't really tell too much of a difference. However, loudspeakers, they do have dual loudspeakers on both of them. So down the bottom here, up the top, and then down the bottom and up the top when you opened it, that is, on the left-hand side. So I have tested them and listened to them both. I think it's the Z Fold 6 that sounds a little louder, and really they are very similar with the bass, the mids, and trebles. Perhaps similar hardware. It's hard to tell without actually opening them up, of course. But let's have a listen. Let me know. Do you think it's the Z Fold 6 that sounds louder and better, or is it the S24 Ultra? All right, it's a little hard to hear, probably using my microphone, but I can tell you now that I think it's the Z Fold 6 that is better than the S24 Ultra, the loudspeakers, which is a bit of a surprise to me. Over to the cameras between the Z Fold 6 and the S24 Ultra. You can see with the outer camera of the Z Fold 6 compared to the S24 Ultra, the quality very, very similar. Similar Samsung processing style to it, audio quality very similar. But remember, with the Z Fold 6, we can use the rear cameras and use the outer screen as our viewfinder for the preview. So you could get slightly better than this, and you could get the electronic image stabilization and optical if you did use the rear main 50 megapixel camera of the Z Fold. So both of these look similar, audio the same, really. Not much of a difference here. Let's have a look at the rear cameras now. So with the main cameras now, we do have 50 megapixels optical image stabilization versus 200 optical image stabilization. Both do use electronic, and with those main cameras, 4K 30, they both can shoot 8K. We're looking at really, I think, a very similar quality. So if you shoot a lot of video, there's not too much of a difference in it. The big one is, of course, the zoom, which is obvious. So this is 5 times zoom with the S24 Ultra, and you can take it up to 3 times optical with the Z Fold 6. The Z Fold 6, I will now bring that up to, that is now 5 times to make it the same there as the S24 Ultra. And here you can see, yes, there is a noticeable difference at the quality of the Z Fold, with the zoom video at least not looking anywhere as good, and that's to be expected with that difference in optical zoom. So we'll go to the ultra wides now on both of them. So 12 megapixels with the Z Fold 6, and using electronic image stabilization with both of them. Low light video. Is there a massive difference here between the Z Fold 6 and a Galaxy S24 Ultra? Well, looking at both of the screens as I record this, no, I can't really see that much of a difference. Main cameras that I'm using right now, so that's 200 megapixels versus the 50, so there is a difference in that. And what about lens flare? Seeing not that much at the moment with what I'm looking at, and as I pan around, hopefully no drop frames with these. Focus on both seems to be okay, and stabilization not quite as good as the daytime, of course. The difference with the still shots, there doesn't look to be a lot in it at first glance. You can see the white balance between both of them is slightly different. I would say that the colors seem to be a little bit more realistic with the S24 Ultra versus the Fold 6. And there is a little bit more noise with that 50 megapixel sensor with the Fold 6 that I have noticed. And maybe a fraction more details with the flagship Galaxy S24 Ultra. The big difference, however, is like we saw with video, the zoom photography. So we've got the 3x optical max with the Fold 6 versus 5x optical. I took both of them up to 10x zoom. So there's a bit of digital, quite a lot of digital zoom in here. And you can see clearly that it is the S24 Ultra that's going to pull ahead. And this will happen every single time. I don't need to show you 20 images because it's always going to be the S24 that takes the better zoom shots. Another photo that is very close, this bright red hibiscus flower. And you can see that it's the S24 Ultra that does get more details of those petals. You can see the different shades. There's less clipping compared to the Z Fold 6, but it's still an excellent photo, and especially for a foldable, does really well. As for the ultra-wide cameras, there is really not a lot in it. I can't see the details being really that much different compared to what we saw with video. With video, it was very clear it was the S24 Ultra, but with stills, they seem to be almost identical. Daytime selfies, portraits, they really look the same between both of them. I did find that the Z Fold 6 tends to be a little bit brighter for some reason. But the area where the Z Fold 6 does fall well behind, and this is the same as the Z Fold 5 and the previous models, is indoors. There's a lot of noise to the sensor, and I found that it just cannot match the S24 Ultra when it comes to indoor shots. With this portrait, the more you zoom in, the more noise you can see, which does ruin this photo, sadly. Low light performance, they are both very similar. This is a bit of a surprise here. You can see the background does have some noise to it. It's present also on the S24 Ultra, the same as the Fold 6. When I crop in, perhaps a little bit more noise, yes, coming through with the Fold 6. That's the only real difference, but when you don't crop in, they're very similar, the low light performance. So to make things simple, it really boils down to this, I feel. If you're a creative type, someone that uses a stylus a lot, perhaps you're jotting down a lot of notes, you like to sketch out designs on your phone, and you have tried the S series before, but you find the screen is too narrow for the stylus, and you really wish it was wider, like a little bit more like an A4 paper size, well, a more squared off rectangular size, then the Z Fold 6 is for you. And if you're someone that multitasks a lot, you love having apps side by side, you love having a game running, perhaps answering your social media messages and whatnot, or watching a video clip, then again, the screen, real estate, the size we get with the Z Fold 6 is probably for you then. However, if you want the best battery life, the best cameras, the best performance, and something that is just a little easier, I think, to put in your pocket, not being quite as wide, then that is the Galaxy S24 Ultra for you. And you still have the stylus support. So there are some big differences. And as you saw, cameras in some scenarios similar, but then in others they aren't. So there are a lot of things to consider there. And I hope this video did help you with your decisions there. Thanks a lot for watching, and I do hope to catch you in the next one. Bye for now.